This is a story about a guy named Mark. He always loved adventure. He watched many videos about surviving in the wild, read articles, but all his experience was limited to walks in the city park. Then one winter day, he decided to go on a one-day hike in a northern forest. "I'll only be a few hours. I'm well prepared," he told his friends as he left. His backpack wasn't very heavy. Sandwiches, a thermos of tea, a spare jacket, and a new expensive compass. The day was frosty but sunny, and Mark was full of confidence. The first hours of the walk were wonderful. The snow sparkled in the sun, and the forest was so quiet he could hear his own breathing. Mark took pictures of strange-looking trees and mysterious tracks in the snow. He didn't notice how far he had strayed from the marked trail, but it didn't worry him. After all, he had a compass. He decided to find a picturesque clearing with a frozen lake that he had seen on the map. He walked deeper into the forest, but the lake was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, it hit him. He was lost. He took out the compass and his heart sank. The needle was shaking and pointing everywhere. As it turned out, a powerful power bank in his backpack was interfering with it. Mark tried to retrace his steps, but a heavy snowfall began, covering all traces within minutes. Soon, he realized he was completely alone. The sky was covered with clouds. It got dark quickly, and the cold, which had earlier felt refreshing, began to seep into his bones. The first wave of panic overwhelmed him. He shouted with all his might, "Is anyone there?" But the only answer was the whistling of the wind in the pine trees. In such a moment, panic is the worst enemy. Mark started running, not choosing his path. He fell into snowdrifts, got caught on branches. His breathing became hoarse and rapid. He exhausted himself and finally understood that running would finish him off. Then he remembered words from an old survival video. If you're lost, stop, think, observe, plan. He forced himself to sit on a fallen tree. His hands were shaking, but he managed to open the thermos. A sip of warm tea cleared his head a little. It became clear. He had to survive this night. He didn't have a tent, but he did have a knife. He found a small rock that provided at least some shelter from the wind. Gathering dry branches from the lower parts of the spruce trees, he tried to start a fire. The lighter clicked, but wouldn't ignite, whether from the cold or the damp. His fingers were almost useless. Out of helplessness, he wanted to scream, but he remembered the rule again. If there's no fire, preserve your body heat. He put on all his spare clothes, finished the tea, and quickly ate a sandwich. Then he cut some spruce branches and made a bed and a sort of blanket out of them. Burrowing into this green bed by the rock, he curled up in a ball and shivered until dawn. It was the longest and most frightening night of his life. The morning brought no relief. It was gray, cold, and quiet. Mark was alive, but he was shaking violently, and a hollow hunger gnawed at his stomach. One chocolate bar was left in his pocket. He understood a simple and terrifying thing. If he just sat and waited, help might come too late. He had to act on his own. The main task was fire. Remembering school lessons, he made a boil to start a fire by friction. He rubbed until blisters formed on his hands. Nothing worked. In a rage, he threw the bow aside, and then his gaze fell on the steel thermos. There was no sun, but there was light through the clouds. He took off the cup lid, poured a little water into it, trying to catch the reflection on a bunch of dry moss. All he got was a dull glowing dot. He froze, holding his breath. And then, the thinnest stream of smoke. He blew on it softly, added moss, then tiny twigs, as if handling a fragile treasure. And then it appeared a small, living orange flame. When the fire caught, tears streamed down Mark's face. This was not just warmth. This was hope. Now, with the fire, things became easier. He could melt snow and drink warm water, but the hunger remained. He looked for berries under the snow, but without success. With every hour the weakness grew, and his thoughts became sluggish and confused. The most insidious enemy raised its head: despair. He wanted to lose consciousness in sleep by the fire. A quiet voice whispered in his head, "Why suffer? It's all pointless." Mark understood that if he gave in, he wouldn't wake up. And so he started talking. At first, he just named the things around him: tree, fire, snow. Then he began addressing those he remembered. "Dad, there are such tall pine trees here." "Kate, imagine, I made fire without matches." This strange, out-loud conversation kept his consciousness from falling apart. He set himself a clear goal: to build a more reliable shelter from branches to preserve the heat from the fire. The work, even if slow, made his blood circulate and his mind focus. On the third day, he could barely stand. The chocolate had been eaten long ago. Fear had been replaced by apathy. He just mechanically maintained the fire. He decided to walk along a small stream that babbled not far away. From videos, he knew that streams lead to larger bodies of water, and there might be a human trail there. He walked very slowly, stopping every few minutes. And suddenly, in the snow, he saw other tracks, large, clear ones, moose tracks. Walking along the path already trampled by the animal was much easier, and without thinking, he followed them. After a couple of hours, the forest began to thin, and the tracks led him to an old, abandoned logging road, only lightly dusted with snow. This was a sign. The wide, hard surface under his feet seemed like the greatest gift. His last reserves of strength awakened. He walked along the road, almost not thinking anymore, just putting one foot in front of the other. And then, through the whistling wind, he thought he heard another sound, a distant bark. Mark stopped, thinking it was a hallucination from exhaustion. But the sound repeated. Gathering all the air in his lungs, he yelled, "Hey, hello!" A few agonizing minutes later, a dog ran out from around the bend, followed by a man in a warm sheepskin coat and Ushanka hat, a local hunter. Seeing Mark, the man froze. "My dear boy, where did you come from?" the hunter exclaimed. "The whole village has been looking for you for 3 days." For Mark, these words sounded like the most beautiful music in the world. Later, in the hospital room, after he had warmed up and come to his senses, his friend visited him. "So, did all your fancy gadgets help you?" his friend asked, nodding at the backpack in the corner. Mark smiled weakly and shook his head. No, they almost all failed me. I was saved by 3 simple things that weren't in the backpack. First, I forced myself to calm down and think when I wanted to scream and run. Second, I found the strength to take that very first small step just to make a fire. And third, I didn't allow myself to give up, even when it seemed like the only way out. I just did the next necessary thing. He looked out the window at the warming sun. He survived not because of things, but because of what he dug up within himself: calmness, perseverance, and hope. And this knowledge changed him forever. Now he knew for sure the most terrible test happens not in a snowy forest, but in your own mind. And it can be endured. I hope this story made you feel calm and warm. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. New stories and new journeys will be waiting for you here.